Hey, good people, what's going on? It's your host and founder of the Someday Life podcast, Justin Christensen. I'm excited to share this episode with you. My guest is a fabulous human being all the way around. She is somebody that I've looked up to and just admire. She takes a lot of risks in her life, and she has accomplished a lot of things. She's currently the City of Idaho Falls Council President. She's Mrs. Bonneville County, and she actually competed in Mrs. Idaho last year for the first time. It's not typically something that she does, but she's willing to be bold and to take those risks. And I think her message and her story is something that we need to pay attention to, and that we need to definitely look at and, just evaluate our own lives. And maybe we could take more risks like her and do things that make us uncomfortable. I hope you enjoy it. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe, and you can follow the podcast on Instagram at Someday Life Podcast. You can find us on Facebook as well. We share a lot of cool information and just some different insights that you're not getting on the podcast episodes. So here's the episode, and I hope you enjoy it. So we were just talking about off air. I think it's kind of funny that you're a Lakers fan.
Yep.
Packers fan.
Yep. Family. And
we've just kind of figured out this common interest with one another right now, which is really cool. So with the championship, were you guys glued to watching the bubble?
Oh my gosh.
The whole playoffs in the bubble. Absolutely. And stuff like that?
Well, I am originally from San Diego, and so the Lakers, just
Southern California.
Yeah, just kind of, it was the home team. And my brother was 6 foot tall by the time he was 12 years old. So he was actually, I think, one of the first people to ever dunk during a game at Hillcrest High School. And basketball has just always kind of been our sport.
Yeah.
And then I ended up marrying a super Lakers fan, who actually drew a picture of Kareem and got to meet Kareem and have him sign it and everything when he was in Utah State. Yes. And so I kind of was out of basketball during college and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I met my husband and just kind of got really into it. And I think it saved my life this year, honestly. It gave me something to look forward to. And, we did miss a game. We were already LeBron fans. So when LeBron came from the Cavs, I shed tears. I was so happy when he became a Laker, because it was like a dream come true for us to have our favorite player currently. Yeah. Of course, after Kobe, but to have LeBron be a Laker it was the dream. So
how cool is that, right?
Yeah, it was the best.
See, and I'm a diehard Kobe guy. So this year's been really tough for me.
This is a rough year. Yeah.
It is a rough year. Starting out in January, hearing about that devastating news with him and his wife and the other passengers in that helicopter. I was in shock. I remember my wife coming in. I was taking a nap because I was actually up in my parents' house, and I helped my dad run a cattle ranch. And so we're calving during the winter. So we're kind of glued to the ranch watching and make sure everything goes well.
Yeah.
And I was super tired, and I was just taking a nap in the room, and I remember my wife just gasping. I could hear her gasp in the back room for air, and she's like, "No way." And when it first came out, it was kind of like they didn't know who was all on board, right? They thought it was Kobe and his entire family. Right. So I was just instantly, I remember being so teared up that day and just a gut wrench. And my oldest son, who's 10, he's a ginormous basketball guy. And I named him Jacoby. Oh. So I was always such a Kobe guy. I was like, I got to figure out a way. I can't just name my kid Kobe. So I went Jacoby and spelt it just Kobe, Jakobe. So
that's awesome.
He was really down and out. He was bummed, and it was sad to see such a young kid so bummed out.
Yeah.
And he's a big LeBron guy as well. Mm-hmm. And so
my dad actually called me, and I was at the mall with I think my two youngest boys, who are 14 and 9. Mm-hmm. And we were at GameStop. I'll never forget the moment, and my dad called me and said, "Did you hear Kobe died in a helicopter crash?" And I immediately hung up and called my husband, who wasn't with us. And I was the one to deliver that news to him, who is just,
was he just like dumbfounded, like
totally devastated? Totally. I mean, just totally.
I didn't think it was real.
Just total shock. Yeah.
At first, I was like, "There's no way that could happen."
Kobe's last game in Utah, we went to. Of course,
really?
Yeah. Neither one of us had got to see him play, but my stepson had. And so, of course, he had always told us about how amazing it was. He'd got to see him play.
Yeah.
I think it was against the Rockets at some point. And so, yeah, of course, for my husband's birthday, it was like, okay, Kobe's last game before retirement, closest to us, we have to go. So, yeah, my husband's a huge fan. And, yeah, just what else bad could have happened in 2020, you know?
I know, and I've lost some close family members this year, and it's like, ugh. Like, really? Like, it's just a bum year.
It's certainly been probably the worst year of my life.
Yeah, that
I don't think anyone's had a good year. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
But I'm super grateful just where we're at. I feel like, I don't know, I think we're getting a hold of everything. Like, I'm just glad the election's over.
Yeah.
Because you stack that on top of the dumpster fires that are already going on. And
absolutely.
I stay off of social media as much as I can. I try to be really reserved. Like, I use it for certain purposes and to keep up with family that's not nearby.
Yeah, me too.
But man, it's super toxic, and I would love to like change that. I don't know how one person does it. I think it's something that we all need to do and all do our part on, like just being nice and being more courteous. It's like the mask thing, you know, it's like mask, no mask, or is COVID real, is it not real? And I mean, everybody has their opinions, and that's fine, but I wish we could get to a place where there was just more common ground, and it wasn't like, if you're on the right side or the left side, like, I just don't like that. I love the in-between stuff.
Well, I think civility seems to have just sort of gone out the window this year, and I think the internet and social media as a whole has just made that so much easier. I mean, they say keyboard warriors, right?
Yeah.
People who would never say something to your face, but will attack you for any reason they can find. Your profile picture, a comment you make, and it's really hard to communicate in the written language. I am famous for, particularly in my early 20s, sending an email that seemed really harsh, and it really was never meant to be.
Yeah.
And I had to sort of, I had to take a real serious look at my email style, like in my late 20s, because I was getting this feedback that you seem really upset, and I'm like, I'm not upset at all. I'm just such a direct person.
Sure.
That my language was coming out really direct in this written form, and the soft edges that really were there weren't being translated. And I think that happens a lot in social media, where people either they feel like they can just give it their all, because what are you going to do? Show up at their house? I mean, you have almost no consequences, particularly when you're dealing with strangers, right?
True.
But, recently, there was actually a Facebook post that my husband had made, and it was made in jest. And if you know him, you knew it was a joke, and he was just kind of making fun of the situation. And we had somebody who I'd consider an acquaintance, friend. I mean, I've spent a little bit of time with this gentleman, and his kids go to school with our kids, and just kind of go off the deep end on this post. And it was so funny, because I thought, you would never say that to my face. You would never come into my home or see me in the mall and say that to me, because you know who I am, and you know that I'm a good person, and you know my husband's a good person, and you would never attack us like this over something. And many of my husband's friends jumped in and said, man, this guy doesn't know a joke when he sees one, but that's the internet and the culture that we've now cultivated.
Yeah.
And back in the day, I used to teach social media classes at what is now College of Eastern Idaho, and I used to teach social media for business. So primarily, marketing and promotional purposes, and mostly really small businesses. And it was very interesting to just see this generation of people, typically about 10, 15 years older than me, who are avoiding the internet, and we're avoiding the internet at that point in time, and social media to promote their business, because they could not handle the divisiveness. And this was years ago. This was 10 years ago I was teaching these classes, way before what I think you see is the craziness now on social.
Well, it almost sets you up to because there's a comment section. I mean, that's what social media is. Tell us what you think. And I feel like people need to read into that less. They need to, no, I don't need to give my opinion. I'll just hold it to myself. Because we could all see a post and say, oh, I could just throw in my 2 cents here.
Yeah.
But why? It wastes your time, and you know that there's going to be some disagreement with your opinion. And these people that go back and forth, I'm just like, man, that is a time suck. Guys, stop doing that.
How do you have the time? Well, and I think there's an argument for a lot of people who get into those conversations that they want to educate people, right?
Yeah.
And they kind of go through this process of back and forth commenting because they're trying to educate, they're trying to correct. And that was me at one point in time, where I would have, I think, some really difficult conversations online, particularly when it came to local and state issues, where, I saw myself as the person that needed to inform and provide the facts, provide the documentation, and take the emotion out of it.
Sure.
And what I have found, particularly in 2020, is how unsuccessful that strategy is. That people come into these circumstances believing a certain way. And it doesn't matter how much fact you throw at them, how much documentation you throw at them. They believe what they're going to believe. And you are not going to change someone's mind on social media. And it's really a waste of time to try to do so.
Well, we live in such a lot of us have closed minds. I mean, a large percentage of the population is listening to respond instead of listening to listen,
Yeah.
And that's where it becomes super challenging.
Bias confirmation, really.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
So, we'll get off the whole social media thing. That's a whole different animal. But I would like it if you would just kind of share with the audience you've had a lot of different jobs, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that because we met, it's been years ago, but I've seen you in different things.
I was actually trying to think. I think that you and I met the fall of 2005 at the mall. Does that sound right?
That probably would have been right.
Okay.
I was trying to put a date on it, and I was like, has it been that long?
Yeah, I think fall 2005, because you were there before I was there.
I was working in the mall.
You were working in the mall, yeah.
That's that job was really fun, because when you work in a mall, you kind of get this mall family.
Oh yeah, it's a subculture.
It's a subculture.
It is.
I remember being outside of the mall. When I was outside of my job, people would say, "Are you the cell phone guy?"
You know what's funny is I remember when you left, because it was like you were like a staple. I mean, you were a staple.
I was always parked out in front. I'm like out in the kiosk area where everyone sees me. Yeah, and I just feel like a fish in a fishbowl. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so that was a fun time, though. I learned a lot and met a lot of great people. It's really cool, though, in our community where it is smaller. You see people kind of advance in their careers, whether it's marketing or business or whatever. And it's really cool to just see how people start in a certain place and how they maneuver, and then they kind of end up in the space that they were supposed to be at.
Yeah.
And it kind of ties into why I even started this podcast, was because I felt oftentimes I don't know if procrastinating is the word. It's more like, things are not that important to them, but people have a lot of big dreams and ambitions. And I saw that people fall short of those constantly. And I thought, well, why is this? I mean, there's so much information out there, and mentors and motivational speakers and life coaches and stuff. It's like, why are people falling short of their goals? And I thought, well, they kind of have this someday mentality, because I fell into that category where I didn't really choose the job I wanted to do. I just took what was available. And unfortunately, after a while of doing that, I mean, I've really enjoyed it, but it was never something that I really wanted to do, that just burned inside of me. And I didn't feel like I was really making a difference. I know I was making a difference. I just didn't feel the impact, because working for a large corporation, it's very much about production and what can you do for me today, And I'm like, I want to get into a spot where I can help influence other people and help them make that transition jump to having an idea and to actually seeing it through and executing it. And you're a small business owner, so I would like to just kind of get and it doesn't have to be just business. I actually had somebody reach out to me and it's like, hey, is this like a business motivational, go start a business podcast? And it's like, no, it's not. It's like society and culture and just doing things that you want to do. Maybe it's traveling.
Yeah.
Maybe it's, maybe it is buying something. Maybe it's buying some land or a farm or whatever it is. Like these fear and anxiety and these mental barriers that we just kind of, we attach ourselves to. I feel like it just cripples us through life. And then you become like 50, 60 years old and you don't necessarily have the mind or the physical capabilities. And you sit back and you just play your life back through your head and you're almost more upset on the things that you didn't do.
I would say that the hallmark of my career and my personal life is my ability to take risks and take them without much hesitation. Yeah. I mean, and you mentioned that I've had a lot of jobs and that's not untrue. But it's because I have always felt this sense to not waste one day of my life. And every time an opportunity comes knocking, I try to always open the door if I can and say yes. And I remember, speaking of my mall days, my first job out of college was at the Grand Teton Mall as the marketing assistant. And I came into the position, and about 3 months into it, the marketing manager said, hey, I'm going to a mall in Texas. I want you to take over. And I had just graduated from college. I was scared. They interviewed other people and they ended up choosing me. And so within, 6 months of graduation, I'm now in a position that people usually spend, 5, 6, 7, 8 years to work towards. Well, about 2.5 years into that position at the mall, I get this phone call from the vice president of development for Ball Ventures, a wonderful, amazing mentor and leader named Eric Isom. He calls me up out of the blue. Never heard of this guy. And he says, hey, are you interested in a different position? We're kind of looking around. It was a very kind of just, hey, I'm Eric. We're looking around at doing some different things with our marketing department here at Snake River Landing. Have you heard of us? And at this point in time, 900 Peerview Drive had been built, and they were building 901 Peerview Drive, which is, of course, where Love at First Bite is now. And I basically said, oh, not interested, and I hung up the phone.
No way.
I did. And instantly I regretted it. I mean, like 45 seconds later, I was like, what did I do? This could be this huge opportunity. And I'd heard about Snake River Landing. Most people didn't know what it was. I had heard of it because I had gone down to this International Council of Shopping Centers conference in Salt Lake, where basically all of the brokers, the real estate brokers, present major projects to malls, to just anybody in commercial real estate. Mm-hmm. And the brokers, I think it was NAA Commerce at the time, who had the listings at Snake River Landing, were there presenting this project. And so I knew what they were. And so I called I called my spouse at the time, and I said, hey, I just got this call. And I basically said, no, thanks. And he's like, is that what you really wanted to do? And I was like, no, I was just afraid. And he's like, well, what are you going to do now? And I'm like, I'm going to call him back.
Yeah.
And so I Googled Ball Ventures, and I called the phone number. And I said, may I talk to Eric, please? And I'll never forget the receptionist saying, which one?
Oh, no.
But I didn't know. I didn't remember his last name. And so I said, he called to talk about marketing and some things. And he's like, okay. They're like, okay, we have an accountant and we have a business development real estate, Eric. Which one do you think it is? I said, I think it's the real estate one. And so Eric got on the phone and I said, hi. I think I hung up too prematurely. I'm a loyal employee and I didn't really know how to take your conversation. Yeah. And I would love to sit down with you if you're still interested. And he said yes. And that led to, 3 years as the marketing director at Ball Ventures and Snake River Landing. But I wouldn't have picked that phone up and had the courage to say, you know what, I made a mistake. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Will you take me back? And I feel like all of my career has been a series of honestly risky decisions that I chose to take the risk. And I think I was better off.
What do you think? Why are you able to take those risks and maybe other people are not?
You know, it's only honestly recently, after having a conversation with my kids, that I feel like I can answer that question. And it's the inner dialogue. I don't really have an inner monologue telling me, oh, why did you do that, Michelle? Oh, that looks stupid. Why did you say that thing? I don't have an inner critic. And so...
Not much self-doubt, then.
Yeah. And how did I get that? How did I get there? And I've been trying to piece all of these things together.
Yeah.
Because it's a question I get a lot is, you know, how do you do all of the things that you do? It's probably the most common question I get. And do you sleep? Those two things sum up the questions I get every time I do a presentation or I speak somewhere. Those two things are what I get. And I think I can do all of the things because I don't have anything inside of me telling me that I can't do it. And how did I get there? I think, honestly, it was my parents. My parents were just so loving, always believing in me, believing in my siblings, always telling us we could do anything we wanted to do. I still remember, I was probably 21 or 22. I just remember calling my dad on the phone and saying, Dad, did you realize that my teeth are off-centered? So, if you ever seen a picture of Tom Cruise where his teeth don't line up symmetrically?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, mine don't either. And I remember saying, Dad, did you know this? And he's like, of course. And I said, I just realized this. I'm 21. How come you guys didn't say anything? Or, I don't know, try to fix it. You know, something. And he's like, you're perfect. Why would we mess with this? Why would we ever say anything? There's nothing wrong with you. And I think that really sort of summarized how he and my mom both treated all of us. That it wasn't necessarily that we could do no wrong. It really was, we believe you can do absolutely anything. And I think when you're raised that entire way, and I still have those two parents who are my biggest fans, who tell me all the time how great I am and how proud of them they are of me. When you have that kind of support, I really do think it sets you up so well to really accomplish anything. But why I don't have the inner critic, I don't know. I have to think it's just my parents.
It's almost best not to know.
Well, I do think that... I
mean, I guess you know where it kind of comes from, and that supporting cast has obviously paid huge dividends.
Well, when I chose to do Mrs. Idaho last year, a lot of people came to me and said, I can't believe you're doing this. Like, I couldn't have seen this coming, which is what I get a lot, by the way. You know, whether, you know, when I ran for council or when I left my job at FinFun and started working with Blue Phoenix, it's not that I don't ever get scared. It's just I'm willing to live in the fear and work through it and do scary things, knowing that I can do scary things.
Yes.
And I think, you know, maybe that's where because the critic's not there, I do have that belief that, am I always going to be the best at everything I do? No, I don't believe that. Yeah. But
almost knowing that other people are not as well. I mean, they're not. We can't be perfect at every position that we're doing.
Yeah.
I think that may play into some of that confidence there, because you understand it's like I can take that risk and I can live in that scary moment and I can thrive, but I will have some mistakes there. But I mean, experience is not a thing if you do not mess up.
Well, and just I really think that gaining the experience at all and having the experience is the success. Not necessarily winning something or being the best or getting an accolade for it. You know, it's the experience for me that is the meaningful part. And when you, I think, stop focusing on the outcome and just live in the moment and what you can gain from that moment and what you can learn about yourself, to me, that is success.
Yeah, I'm a huge advocate of not focusing. This mindset took a while for me to adopt and to foster, because working in the sales industry, everything is it's productivity. It's like, what are your results? And I had a hard time of separating who I was as a person and what I did as a salesperson. I put myself into this position where I judged myself on how many sales I made in a year, and that determined how good of an insurance agent I was. And that I do not recommend for anyone. It is, and I actually had a counselor tell me this, and he said, he was saying, like, work is what you do, it's not who you are. And for the longest time, I didn't have any separation there. And that was a big stepping stone for me, is to realize that it's more about the journey and the path of what I'm doing than it is about the result. Does that make sense? Like, the actions that I'm taking, like, I want to enjoy the actions and stuff that I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then just let the results be what the results are.
I'm very utilitarian, and it is very hard because that is sort of that achiever, utilitarian.
Yeah.
You have to be useful mindset that I do think a lot of successful people have. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you're not enjoying yourself if that is all that you have, right? Yeah. And, it's
very empty.
Ever read the love languages, the 5 love languages? Yes. Okay. So mine is acts of service. I am all about doing things for people. That is what I do. I am a doer. And when I am not doing enough, it is very hard to look at myself as either, good, successful, killing it, whatever you want to call it, if I'm not producing. Mm-hmm. And it has taken a very long time to get to the point where I can just sit in the experience and say, this in and of itself is good and worthy.
Yes.
And not necessarily all of the outcomes. And it's been a challenge, I think, to also not judge other people, not necessarily for their outcome of how much did they win, how much did they do, whatever those things are. But I struggle with people who I think are not reaching their potential. I struggle with those people who say, "Oh, I'm just too busy to do that." Mm-hmm. I laugh because I think, honey, you don't know busy. And then I try to remind myself that, my plate is bigger and it might be made of steel and it can fit more on it. And it's strong because I have a great support system. I have an amazing husband who, he's my better half of every single thing I do. I mean, I couldn't be and do the things I do without him there. And not everyone has that, right?
Right.
I have amazing friends. I have amazing parents. I have all those things. And somebody else's plate might be very small and made of glass and easily broken. And I have to remember not to compare those plates because I can get wrapped up in that utilitarian.
Yeah.
We all need to be useful mindset.
How did the Miss Bonneville and the Idaho thing come about? Because that does seem like kind of a leap from what you usually do.
So I used to be the marketing manager for FinFun.com. So #1 swimmable mermaid tail in the world.
Yes.
Headquartered in Idaho Falls. And my husband had started a little ad agency that I ended up leaving my position at College of Eastern Idaho to join him with. He's a professional graphic artist, an illustrator, and photographer. And I was doing that with him. So we were mostly helping small businesses with graphic design and different things. And this position at FinFun, again, another risk I took. I applied for one job. I just decided, I said, you know what, Dane, my husband Dane, to work for a company who markets internationally here in Idaho Falls, so rare. So rare.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I'm just going to apply, see what happens. And I ended up getting the position. And I went from working at home comfortably 5 days a week to working outside of the home 50 hours a week. And it was lots of travel, huge change, right? Anyway, during my time at FinFun, I met a local family who has a beautiful little girl. who was one of my favorite models to use. And my husband actually did photography for FinFun as well. And we've kept finding ways to work with each other over the last 9 years. And anyway, I met this family and we became Facebook friends. And it turns out that she is a pageant coach and is one of the directors of the Mrs. Idaho and Miss Idaho for America pageants. And she posted this thing on Facebook saying, hey, we're looking for married, accomplished, service-oriented women who want to compete. And back in my high school days, I did 2 years of high school pageants. I've been singing my whole life. These are talent pageants primarily. Mm-hmm. And I loved every second of it. And I absolutely attribute certainly a percentage of my confidence to what I learned in pageants in high school. And, it is more than just walking and looking a certain way. Usually in pageants, and this is high school as well as Mrs. Idaho, your interview is 50% of your score. So what you say and how you can present yourself is huge. It's mostly what pageants are, and most people don't realize that. And so I gained so much confidence in high school from practicing that, and I always slayed interviews. And since then, I've never been interviewed for a job that I didn't get offered my entire life. And I do think it's from the skills I gained at 16, 17 years old. So I saw this post, and, knowing me, my heart just went, you know what I haven't done? I haven't done that yet. I haven't done that yet. I haven't done an adult pageant. I could be a good role model. I mean, I think I could be a role model for other women and younger women particularly.
Absolutely.
And so I messaged this gal, like I said, whose daughter modeled for FinFun, who I knew, and said, hey, I'm kind of interested in this. What do you think? And she's like, oh my gosh, you have to do this. And the pageant was 6 weeks away. And what I didn't know is that is an unreasonably short amount of time to prepare for a state pageant. But me, I'm like, I got this. I can go ahead and do this. So I sign up, but I have to have everything like right away, headshots and ads, and I got to start pageant prep and shopping and doing all of the things. And I just went to my husband and said, hey, so I'm thinking about this Mrs. Idaho pageant. It's in 6 weeks. What do you think? He's like, follow your dreams, baby. If you want to do it, let's sign up, But I had no idea really what I was in for until I applied. And you go through a process, and then they designate you a title. And so I am Mrs. Bonneville County. This is my second year running here. And competed in Boise in last August.
How many competitors?
October. So I think there was somewhere around 22, throughout the state. And it's women of all ages, all backgrounds, ethnicities. Really the thing that everyone had in common is that they love their communities and they really serve. Everyone is heavily involved in volunteer work and really trying to lift up other women and make them better. I would say probably the youngest competitor was a 21 or 22-year-old out of, I think, Coeur d'Alene or that kind of northern Idaho area. And the oldest is like early 60s. So it's a huge, like I said, a lot of diversity in the group of women there.
Whoa. That's really cool. I mean, it just shows me how bold you really are. And I'll
try anything pretty much if I think I'm gonna learn something from it.
Well, and then you figure it out when you're there. This is what I wish, because I'm very similar to you on how I've got into different positions, and I didn't graduate from college, but since I was 19, 20, I've worked for, Fortune 500 company. Now I work for a Fortune 100 company, have started multiple businesses, and people would think that, I don't buy into the whole, you have to be smart to do something, like I just,
you have to be brave to do something. You have to be brave.
Yeah, and I'm somebody that I suffer from anxiety and a little bit of depression. Like those two things kind of are common factors that run through my family. And for somebody, like I'll give you a perfect example. Like I'm nervous to get on a plane. Like my anxiety, like I feel like, oh, the boats are burning, like this thing's going down. You know, every time I get on a plane, I'm so uncomfortable with it. I hate it. But I can walk into a business unannounced and feel comfortable. I can do public speaking. mean, these are things that people really like
get scared of.
Yes, doing presentations in front of groups of people.
Yeah.
For some, like, I'm scared, but for some reason, I've thrived in those positions. And it's just because I talk myself into getting into the arena.
Yes.
And I'll just, whatever happens, happens. I feel like that's a lot about life. I did this little podcast. I have these little 10-minute podcasts that I do. And you can see this bison here on the desk. I had picked up this mantra earlier this year from a book that I read. And he was talking about how bison, when a storm comes, they turn and they run into the storm. Where their close counterparts, they're like cattle, they'll herd up together. And they'll just kind of bunker down. And the storm just kind of comes and just drills them. And they're actually stuck in the storm longer. But bison, they turn and they just run towards the storm. Because they know that they'll get through it quicker because the storm's moving this way and they're moving that way. And I thought, man, that's my life. Like, head into the storm.
Yeah.
Be the bison.
Yeah.
And when I start playing it back and I look at the leaps that I've made and where I've fallen short because I didn't take the risk. I didn't approach the storm. Whether that's in your relationship, relationships with friends and coworkers, business ideas, just any time that you feel like maybe it's working out, these storms that you slowly build up in your head and they become these big things and you almost talk yourself out of it. And I admire you, like with the first job with the Ball Ventures. I mean, you could have easily not called that person back. I think 95% of people would have just been like, I messed up that opportunity. They would have just replayed it in their head and they would have had regret. But you took action. I'm just going to call this person back. As awkward as I may feel doing that.
Yeah. Oh, and it was awkward.
Oh, yeah.
Just so it's crystal clear.
Before the podcast, we were kind of just mentioning some stuff that we could chat about and stuff. And you had shared something with me that I did not know at all. And that is the kidnapping incident that you had at age 13.
Yeah.
You said that you did a TEDx talk on it.
Yeah.
I actually had YouTube that.
I tell people don't watch it. Just because you're going to watch me cry for like 17 minutes. It
was very heartfelt. It's not good. And I love the message of it. And the message was, I choose love over fear. So would you be okay with sharing?
Yeah.
Sharing that story with a little bit?
Yeah. So I was born in San Diego, but we moved around quite a bit when I was a child. And I lived in Texas for a few years, and I lived in Nashville, Tennessee for quite a few years. And my parents got divorced, and my mom is actually from Swan Valley. And so she moved me and my little brother up here. And we lived here for a few years. My dad actually joined us here because my parents were so dedicated to raising us together.
Sure.
And so my dad moved up here to Idaho. And, but, winters got hard and we moved back to California. And one day, it was summer, at the very beginning of summer break. I had walked over to the high school. This was the summer after my freshman year. I walked over to the high school to see some friends that were taking some summer classes and just chatted with them. It's a walk I did every single day in California, and I think it's probably still like this. You have to live really far away to get bused to school. So I was used to walking, about 3 miles a day to and from school. That was very normal. And so I took the walk I took every day, and I was leaving the school, and this guy came up to the right of me, and I could sort of feel a presence. And I kind of looked off to the side and saw a guy standing there, getting very close to me. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of scurried faster. And he said, "Hey, wait up. What's your name?" And, I knew better than to talk to strangers, right? So I just kept walking. And he said, "No, I think I know you. Just tell me your name." And I walked a little bit faster. And he's like, "No, I think you live right next to me." And I, at this point in time, I just kind of glanced, and he didn't look familiar, but didn't look unfamiliar. And I just said, "It's Michelle." And he's like, "Oh yeah, don't you live blah, 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 blah." And I just kept walking. And before I knew it, he had his arm wrapped around my throat and was dragging me and just had kind of lift me off the ground. And he was taking me up this hill. and just said, my car's parked up here and you're going to get in it. And I did exactly what we tell kids to do. You fight. I fought. I screamed. I got my neck loose enough that I could actually make a sound and just kept kicking behind me and wiggled enough where I could really scream. Mm-hmm. And somebody came out. Literally right next to the cars, which I think his is one of them. But someone had come out of these condos right behind the cars, and he just dropped me. And as he was doing all of this, he was sexually assaulting me, basically, in process. And I was able to just kick free. And I think that, my screaming got the attention of somebody. Although I'm not really sure. I think it was coincidental that this woman walked out of her house. I'm really not sure if she was there necessarily to rescue me.
Yeah. But he saw her.
But he saw her and panicked, I think. And so he dropped me. Like I said, he had me lifted up and was grabbing me, and dropped me, and I just ran all the way home. Went to my room, and I actually waited a couple of hours to tell my parents. I was really just scared. I was just very traumatized from the whole experience. And we just went through the whole, calling the police, looking at books of suspects. I didn't really see him very well. I mean, I could tell, race, gender. He was
behind you the whole time, right?
He was basically behind me the whole time. So, and my parents were like, yeah, we're not going to do this again. And 3 weeks later, we moved back to Idaho Falls. So it was just a very traumatic time in my life. I loved living there. I had friends. My sister still lives there, who I'm very close with, my older sister. And it was just all very, very difficult. But that's how I came to Idaho. And I was, taken from the ghetto, basically, of Escondido, California, to Ammon, Idaho. And I was just total fish out of water. I mean, I even though I had lived here as a child for a few years, I still didn't really know the culture. I was tan, wild hair. I mean, I looked like Southern I wasn't California. From here. Yeah, Roxy board shorts and tank tops. People were like, "Who are you? Like, you look like you washed up from a beach." And it was a really hard year to adjust, and really didn't sort of get my feet under me till my senior year of high school here.
Well, and at age 13. I'm assuming that that's probably just a lot to digest, and like moving forward, how has it impacted your life? I mean, now as a young adult, in your mid 30s.
Please tell me young adult. Just say it over and over again.
I mean, is it something? Do you think about it often?
When I was asked to apply for TEDx. Mm-hmm. And there was a couple of different things that this person talked to me about. One of them was my co-parenting situation, and just because it's really unique and very positive. Big shout out to Brad Christensen, who is the guy who said, "Hey, I really think you should get up and talk." And just sort of, I think, made me ponder that so many of the choices that I've made are really choosing love over fear. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure I think about the situation a ton. Every once in a while, I live near a park, and I have a teenage daughter now who is 14. And, it's a little scary to let her walk to the park or ride her longboard somewhere. It's taken a long time to get to the point where I can do that. And I have to use data. I have to use data to drive that decision and know the likeliness of her riding around in our cul-de-sac and being hurt or kidnapped is almost none in this town. And stranger crime doesn't really happen here. It's not pervasive. If something bad is going to happen to you, it will be from somebody, by somebody that you know. So I have to constantly, with her, insert logic and data and not project my fear and what happened to me onto her. My dad actually found the article that the paper says, I think it says 13-year-old sexually assaulted in Escondido or something like that was in the paper. And he found that clipping and recently. And, some of those things will trigger something. But generally speaking, I think what I learned from that experience is that I am really strong and I can do really hard things.
Yes.
And, I'm not sure I felt that way immediately after or really even the next several years after. Mm-hmm. But I think post-college, I'm the first person in my family to go to college. I went sight unseen with basically no help. I packed up a car and I drove to University of Idaho. I'd never been there. I filled out all my application by myself. I got a job. I worked 50-hour weeks for 4.5 years. Wow. After doing all of those things and being able to grow into adulthood, it really did, I think, just keep coming back to, I'm going to choose the hard thing, and I can do hard things, and I cannot be afraid, and really not make what happened be the center of my decision making.
I love that. Yeah, and it makes sense that you would go to college that way.
Totally, right?
Like, I'm just going.
I'm just going.
We'll figure it out.
I wanted to study law, and it was the law school. So there wasn't, in my mind, there wasn't even a choice. I knew I would never be able to afford out-of-state college, so it was University of Idaho or bus, pretty much. So.
Have you ever thought about being in law enforcement or anything like that? I could see you as like an FBI director.
I love studying law. I love our law enforcement officers. They know it. I try to show it. My dad's dad was a police officer, and my uncle was a police officer. So everyone in my dad's immediate family, except my dad, went into law enforcement.
Oh, okay.
And so I grew up with a real respect for law and a respect for officers, and I think I just never. I guess I just didn't feel like I had it in me, the ability to handle really, particularly bad situations with kids.
That would be tough.
I think it's pretty much safe to say that no council member has ever done as many ride-along hours with our Idaho Falls Police Department as I have, because I'm committed to understanding what they go through and how the choices that we make impact them. And I love everything about the culture. I have met some of the most amazing people through IFPD. I love every second of it. And, they're kind of adrenaline junkies in the sense of like you
almost have to be, right?
You have to be to get through these hard situations and have that adrenaline drive you to make good decisions to protect yourself and protect other people. And, I'm not sure I could live like that, but I don't have any real regrets of not going into law, although I do think now I would really like it. I didn't go into law only because after my first semester in school, my school counselor came to me and said, "Hey, you're doing great, but are you sure this is what you want to do with your life? Because you have way too much personality. I think you're going to hate it." And I was like, "Really?" And they're like, "Have you ever thought about marketing? We could just see you getting up there and just doing so well in marketing." And I was like, well, I was in DECA in high school, and I did junior achievement, which is very marketing driven, bunch of school clubs, And I switched my major after my first semester. It's how I ended up going 4.5 years instead of 4, was I had to completely change tracks altogether. Wow. Like I said, don't regret it, but yeah. I love our friends in law enforcement, and I love law. I mean, it's what I love about city council is making law, studying law.
That's so cool.
Being in the thick of it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, props to, I have some family that are in law enforcement, and I've always been attracted by it. I always thought, man, this would be kind of a good path for me to go. But in fact, obviously we had the whole cops versus everybody this year type thing.
Yeah.
And I'm just so blessed. I feel blessed that we live in a community where majority, I would say 99% of people support our law enforcement. And
that 99.9% of our law enforcement are incredible. And we just simply don't have, in any sort of pervasive manner, some of the challenges that we see at the national level in some of these different communities in different states. I can say with confidence that we don't have those issues here. It doesn't mean that a few people have not made some bad choices, but I think that overall, the systemic racism and the systemic issues that I think that we do see in other places, we don't see here. And we see a lot of law-abiding citizens, and we see a lot of respect and love for our law enforcement. And I'm just, I love living here. Yeah, talk about a crazy job, right? Yeah. I mean, it has to be one of the hardest jobs. I mean, I think about. I've done a lot of ride-alongs, and I've seen some crazy things. Like I said about the kid thing, my first welfare checking in on a child. I don't.
Almost breaks your heart.
Yeah, I don't want to have to. I don't know how you could do that every day.
Yeah.
My very first call was a domestic violence situation, and it was actually a female who was abusing a man and had totally just had gone nuts.
Wow.
And yeah, those situations are very dangerous for law enforcement, and just very dangerous for every person around them.
Well, you think if you had like a desk job,
yeah,
and like you have a confrontation with maybe a client or a customer, but then you're 5-10 minutes, it's done, you go home, it kind of rattles you a little bit. But that's what I think about a police officer. I think about them living in that moment probably 80% of the time.
Yeah.
Where it's chaos, and they're chaos fixers. Like, they have to be mediators.
Yes.
And they have to de-escalate situations constantly.
The job is all about mediation.
The average person, like if they drive by a car accident, they're just like glued to it. And now imagine being the person that's having to make sure everyone's okay there.
Yeah.
But you're doing that almost, multiple times a day or multiple times a week, and just having to be a human being after your job is over. Yeah. That has to be such a challenge. So I feel like giving them the most support that we can is vital to their success and to the well-being of our community in general.
The Idaho Falls City Council just passed, I think, approved two really important pieces of policy. And one, it was our first MOU with a chaplain organization to ensure that officers...
MOU?
Yep, so that's a memorandum of understanding, where we basically partner with, under certain terms, an outside organization. So we partnered with a chaplain organization to ensure that there were some individuals on staff that could be there for our staff members if they needed someone to rely upon, but also a partnership with a local counseling office to ensure that our officers have quick access to mental health care. Yeah. And can actually build relationships with those folks, not just a hotline somewhere, but somebody they could build a relationship with, and that they've done a lot of ride-alongs with our staff too to understand what they're going through. Wow. They've been amazing, and so those two things just got passed in the last couple of months awesome to really ensure that our law enforcement has the mental health care that they need, because we do need to take care of them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So I want to transition before we end the podcast. I want to talk about, because a lot of my audience that listen to this, there's a lot of entrepreneur spirits. Yeah. And a lot of them have these ideas, and they don't know how to take that idea to the marketplace. Like, how do I market it? Where do I get a logo? Where do I do branding? What's available? Yeah. And your position now with Blue Phoenix, can you just touch on that real quick for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, another opportunity and risk that I took. Blue Phoenix Branding, local homegrown organization here. We're a Proforma franchise, and Proforma isn't a brand that's super well known in the West, but in the East, it's huge. It's one of the largest promotional companies in the world. And we own a franchise of that, Blue Phoenix Branding. Okay. And our really good friend, Travis Powell, who actually was my husband and our old business, he was our print rep. So we did all of our professional printing through him and the organization that he used to work for. And he parted ways with that organization and came to my husband and I after his non-compete was over. He had a non-compete in our area for a year. So the day that was up, he said, my wife and I would like to go to lunch with you two. And the four of us sat down at Puerto Vallarta, and they said, look, we see this being the dream team. Your husband here, professional photographer, designer, award-winning artist, Teton Toyota's brands. He did all of the rebranding for Teton Toyota. He designed Idaho Falls Magazine for 15 years. So many of the brands that we know here, my husband has had his fingerprints all over them. And then my background being all in professional marketing, branding, strategy, and then Travis and Angela's experience in finance, in print, in swag. So the four of us sort of teamed up together, and our company, Artcore Visual Studio, merged with Blue Phoenix Branding. So this is almost 3 years ago. And I believe it's 3 years. I'm losing track of time. But the reality is it's cheaper to invest in branding and do it right the first time than to have to go back and fix it. And so many people design logos not understanding all the implementation of that logo. For example, you need a logo that's going to fit now in a perfect square on Instagram. You need a logo that can be embroidered. You need a logo that can go on a pen. We design suites of logos. So typically when a client gets a logo from us or a branding package, it's 5 or 6 logos. It's not one, it's 5 or 6, because we understand that you're going to be using that for all sorts of purposes. But our specialty is really high quality swag and apparel for larger industries such as medical, banking, colleges, financial institutions, title companies, those that are doing consistent swag, and they want a program for it. They don't just want to order pins every 6 months or a handful of shirts. They want a program that really works for their employees for apparel, for gifts for, high value clients, or community events or whatever your need might be. And then trade shows. Trade shows have always been a huge part of what we do. Creating and designing trade show booths, banners, all of those types of things. And so Proforma is sort of the engine behind that. Like I said, with the suppliers nationally, it's a huge brand. And so we've been able to build these really great relationships. I think there's only 3 Proforma franchises in the state of Idaho. Wow. There might only be 2. There's very few here. But we have very big buying power nationally for our clients to really get the best. So we tell people awesome. We don't deal with the cheap swag that people are going to pick up and throw away. We deal with the swag that people want to hold on to. Well,
and that's the worst. I mean, I can speak to that one is, being a business owner. And one of the first businesses that I started was a clothing company. And I learned a lot from that. But I was very amateur in it,
Yeah, sure.
And I learned a lot about branding. And so with clothes, that's a tough business. That's a tough niche to get into.
Yeah.
But I didn't invest the money to brand it. I thought like I could do it all myself.
Yeah.
And I'm learning more and more that that's just not the case. Like you need to have a team. You need to outsource these things. And I think if you're listening to this or watching this and you have a business currently and you feel like you need to rebrand it or you need to do something, I would encourage you to reach out to Michelle and her husband, because and just spend the money and just spend the time to sit down and speak with a specialist.
Well, that's really kind of you. Yeah. I think that, when we started ArtCore Visual Studio back in the day, I think we thought we knew it all, and we started in our living room. We always tell people that my husband's MacBook was also our TV at the time, and he worked in the living room, like at the console. Wow. And it was just funny because we ended up, doing, some pretty significant campaigns just, from our little basement. You can build a business from home. You can do it, but you do have to invest in the right tools.
Yeah.
And the reality is that people aren't going to take you seriously if you look cheap. If you look like somebody who's not doing well, people don't want to use you.
Especially now in
2020, image means everything.
Because you're inundated by it. You look at Instagram, and you look at the animation videos, and you look at YouTube. YouTube is ginormous.
Yeah.
Well,
it's funny just kind of how full circle the whole Blue Phoenix ArtCore thing was, because we felt just like such a connection with Travis Powell, our primary owner of Blue Phoenix. Mm-hmm. And when he decided to go out on his own, he called my husband and said, "Hey, I can't pay you for a logo, but I know I need you. Like you're the best, and I need this to do well, And my husband designed this suite of logos for Blue Phoenix for free. He said, "Look, Travis, we believe in you. We love you. We want you to do well. You have done a lot for us in the 10 years that we've been working together. Mm-hmm. So, one day you'll be able to pay me. I know you will." And handed over this suite of logos. And then, of course, a year later, we ended up merging companies. And now this is the logo and brand that we all wear and love. And Travis frequently tells that story of how, hey, I got started with the best, but only because he was such a good friend and, somebody who believed in me. Yeah. And that's what we want to do for other people. We want to believe in them and give them the best.
I love that. That's awesome. Before we wrap up the podcast, so I have this thing that I'm starting with my guests, and it's called Someday Smoke, where I just bring the smoke to you. So it's basically like rapid fire questions. So I'm going to catch you off guard maybe, but you up for it?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, awesome. Okay, let's go easy. Let's do favorite ice cream.
You know what? I don't eat a lot of ice cream.
If you had to eat an ice cream
cherry chocolate.
Cherry chocolate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chocolate with cherries in it.
Okay, I like that.
It's good.
Favorite place to travel?
Ooh.
Give me a top 2.
Yeah.
Top
3. I got to spend some time in Garibaldi, Oregon, which is just on the coast. Okay. And is one of the most fun trips.
The northern?
Yeah, I think it's more northern. Northern.
It's cold over there. Cold water, isn't it?
Yeah, it's freezing, but it's absolutely beautiful and gray and sad, and I loved every second of it.
Gray and sad.
I got to go with a friend to see Fleetwood Mac on what was going to be their final tour, and camped out in Garibaldi, Oregon. Loved it, and of course, I'm a Southern California girl. You can put me in the beach anytime. I love awesome. It. And I went to St. Croix once, and St. Croix is amazing.
Where's that?
St. Croix is in the Caribbean. It's a Virgin Island. It's a U.S. Virgin Island.
Okay.
I got to do a mermaid photo shoot there with FinFun and my husband. And it was hot and horrible, and I got the sand bugs, and the whole thing was crazy. But it's the most beautiful, warm water and beautiful, amazing people. So U.S. Virgin Islands, pick an island and fly to it. It's amazing.
See, that's my problem is I don't fly very well. So I'd be like, just knock me out and then wake me up.
You have to take like a little 4-person plane from Puerto Rico to the islands. It's rough, man. It's rough. So worth it though.
What are some favorite books you've read this year?
Oh man. So I actually sort of predicted this question, by the way. I am a huge reader, which surprises people because they think you don't have time to read, woman, but I make the time to read. I love to read. I do mostly read fiction though. I really struggle in like the self-help business book kind of genre. Really hard for me. And I think it's because it's actually very difficult for me to sit in my emotions, and those books make me do that. So books are escapism for me. But 2 of my favorite books I've read this year, I'm bad with authors. You'll have to Google these. One is called Fates and Furies, and it's very poetic. In fact, it's probably one of the only books I've had to Google words more than once in. It is just an amazing story. The other one would be, there's a book called This Is Where I Leave You, and it was made into a movie with Jason Bateman a few years ago, and had kind of an all-star cast. That book is phenomenal. I love dark comedy and thriller books. But I was convinced into reading a self-help book at the moment. Well, kind of a motivational book. And it's called Untamed.
Untamed.
By Glennon someone. I'm so bad at authors. But it's kind of the story of how she found love after a really difficult marriage, but with a woman. And she had never considered herself to be, anything but heterosexual, and meets a woman and falls in love with her. And it's just kind of a very interesting story about how, or it's called Uncaged, about all of the cages that life puts you in. And although I can't relate to her particular story,
sure.
I think we can all relate to this concept that society has created constructs and has put all of us in these constructs, right? And we either choose to get out of those constructs. Maybe they work for us, but sometimes they don't work for people, right? And when they're not working for you, getting out of them is a huge thing. And she talks a lot about meditation and that role in her life. When I was a kid, I had a really hard time sleeping, and I actually used to do guided meditation, not knowing I was doing it to myself. I used to think about, when I couldn't sleep, going through this forest made of candy. And I would walk into this house made of candy, and I would look at each candy, and it was the only thing that would put me to sleep as a child. Wow. Which is basically guided meditation now, right? So she talks about that role in her life as an adult, of how she really kind of found this power within her. I cry so much reading this book that I can only read one chapter at a time. One chapter is like 6 pages. Anything more than 6 pages, I get too emotional. It is just such a powerful book. And it's New York Times bestseller. It's easy to find. It's amazing.
That's awesome. guys, check out the book she recommended.
It's crazy, people.
Really cool.
Yeah,
it's good. Really cool.
Yeah.
Well, before we wrap up, do you have anything else that you wanted to? Do you have anything that you want to mention or anything? Or
no, this has just been
rapid fire questions.
No, rapid fire questions for you. I mean, so I have always wanted to start a podcast. Mm-hmm. Mostly to talk more political leanings, not a political podcast, but more about the middle grounds that I think that we can find, and the issues that aren't right or left, because the world that we mostly live in every day is not right or left. It's not even remotely. You know, I have many friends that were happy by the presidential election, many friends that were sad, and I tell them all the same thing. When's the last time a president actually changed your life? Mm-hmm. I mean this. The day-to-day, your life. When's the last time it's ever happened? And most people will say, I'm not sure it's ever happened. I'm like, that's because you're living in this nice little middle area where, you know, welfare systems don't change your life. Tax changes don't really change your life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
None of these things actually impact you.
I think they impact you more. You need to be paying attention more on the local level.
It's the local level that impacts you. You got it. The local level impacts you oftentimes more than national. But anyway, I always wanted to do this. What have you learned about starting a podcast? Is it hard? Is it just fun? Is it?
It's all of that.
Give me your 60 seconds for somebody who might want to start one.
It's all of that. It is something that, first, when I did some data research on it, I found out in 2017, there was already over 850,000 podcasts online. And I didn't do it more so like, hey, I want to be some popular podcasting. I just felt like everything that my life was leading to drew me to that. It's like, I need to be talking with people. I need to be finding ways to help through a medium where I can write pretty well, and I've had a few blogs that I've started, but I want to be talking. I'm a blabbermouth. I just love to chat, and I want to have guests on that can influence my audience where they look at things differently. Whether maybe it's a Republican opinion or maybe it's a Democratic opinion, like it doesn't matter. What I want is to share real life struggles and challenges and not all the stuff that we're force fed from the top down. And I want to just bring it more transparent, and it's been a challenge. The reason why is because most people that will start a podcast, and you can tell by just my production setup, it's not like, you know, the Joe Rogan podcast or like a TED Talks or anything like that. It's very low budget.
Right, lo-fi. Yeah.
Yeah, because I wanted to test the water.
But I think a lot of people are attracted to that, though. I do.
I think so.
Yeah.
Having a producer would be really nice but that's not how I roll. I need to teach myself how to do things. And this is what I want people to understand, is that just get into them like you do. Get into them, figure it out. There's so much research out there. And so I taught myself how to edit audio, how to edit video, how to upload videos, how to cut certain things out. Did research on, you know, what mic should I get? I actually have some boom mics that are coming. I was hoping to get them here before this podcast, but I found that that's something that I need. You know, the desk stuff isn't working like I want it to. So it's a challenge just like anything else.
Yeah.
But I embrace it because I love it so much. It doesn't feel like work. In fact, this is my kitchen. I shouldn't say my kitchen table. This is my wife's kitchen table. So if you walk into my house, I don't have a kitchen table because I convinced my wife that I needed it for podcasting.
I love it.
So here we are. And this used to be an exercise room. Now my exercise room's out in the living room. And
you just adjust.
Yeah, I have like a closet where my computer and stuff's in there where I work, and you just adjust and adapt. And
we started ArtCore. We actually went from the living room to the kids' bedroom, moved the kids' bedroom down to the family room, but they just took it over. They had this giant bedroom because we had to have a place to work. You know, You just make it work.
Exactly, and I think that's the message that we need to be sharing with
Go bold, baby. Go bold.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Go do it. So.
And go Lakers.
Yeah, Lakers.
Sorry,
Season
everybody.
Starts tonight.
We're gonna take their championship, and I'm not sorry to say that to you all.
Exactly. Cool. Thanks, Michelle, for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me.